Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Unfiltered Perspectives. I'm Tara.
I'm Kimberly.
And I'm Leslie.
Today we are talking about transitions, the kind that you don't choose, the kind that leave you standing in a new uncomfortable space sometimes. Those times when you feel like who you were doesn't quite fit anymore, but who you're becoming also isn't really clear yet. So, this is Unfiltered Perspectives, where real talk leads to real growth and every perspective is valued.
Thank you, Tara, for that intro into today's topic, transitioning. What comes to mind? Is there any specific event that you guys can think of or that you see happening for you guys in particular right now?
For me in particular, there isn't necessarily one right now. There have been in the past. What comes to mind is a situation, let's say when you have a child or an only child even, and they, let's say, graduate from high school, graduate from college, what have you, and then you're left with an empty nest. You're left trying to figure out like what it is you do now, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. Or other situations that I know about where somebody's been married for a long time and or been married, their spouse dies, passes
Mhm.
on, or there's a breakup in a relationship, transitions like that.
Right. I can definitely relate to the first part of that, having a senior who just graduated from high school, and we are awaiting his date to leave for the military, and I will be an empty nester. So that's been interesting to see what life looks like with him leaving and me being, alone.
Mhm.
Although I'm excited for him, it still leaves me to wonder what that's going to look like.
Yeah. What other
Well,
transitions do you think, Kim?
So it sounds like we might be talking about a couple different kinds. So on one hand, I'm hearing like some transitions are things that we know are coming versus sort of unexpected transitions. I'm wondering, like for transitions that we know are coming, are there things that you do to plan for them? I think my really biggest transition was moving out here, but that's been 10 years. I haven't really had any major transitions in my life in a decade. This was a major life transition of career and location, and so that just involved a lot of logistical planning. I don't know that I did any kind of emotional or spiritual planning.
Yeah, like even as far as the first thing I mentioned with, your child graduating, even if they don't necessarily move out or even move out right away, there's still some level of transition that happens because I think the relationship changes as well because they're in that spot now where they're no longer a child, but they're still living at home. And so the nature, I think, of your relationship has to
change.
evolve into
Yeah.
something different.
Yeah. This whole him being 18, somewhat of an adult, but not that 21-year-old, and having to give him a certain amount of freedom that I'm not used to him having, not being invasive, but still being protective,
Mm.
letting him kind of do his own thing, but still being very watchful. It's an adjustment, letting him, get his feet wet, watching him grow, letting him have the freedom, and still trying not to hover and invade his, privacy and his space and all of that. It is quite an adjustment.
And how have you been handling it?
Not well.
How has he been handling it?
I think, he won't complain. And then, he's working now too. And so, he has I make sure his location is on. And so a lot of times he may do something before work or he may even do something after work. And I realize that I want to know what those things are, but I don't always have to know because he's entitled to a certain level of, privacy and independence,
Mm.
but it's difficult. It is definitely difficult. Like last night, he got off after midnight, and I want to say come straight home. You know what I mean? But he's kind of an adult, so if he wants to stop somewhere, he has the right to do that. But it's a little challenging.
Mhm.
It's a little challenging making this transition, him into adulthood.
Did you 2 have any conversation about what that would be like? Like, do the rules change? What rules change? What expectations change?
Just a little bit, not a whole lot because he's a good kid anyway, so I didn't expect that I'd have to say too much. He pretty much always lets me know where he's going. He still does ask, "Can I go here or there?" So he does still ask for permission. So we didn't have to go into too much.
Mhm,
That wasn't too difficult. I think it's just more of a me thing.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, been there.
Yeah, I can also relate to what Kim said about I've been in Florida for 3 years and coming to where not necessarily I didn't know anyone, but coming to where I thought people would be supportive and they weren't. So
Mhm,
now I do feel like I'm out here alone, just my son and I.
mhm.
So that transition was extremely difficult. It's gotten better, but it definitely was not what I expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about people that I know, friends, family, who lost a loved one where, like, say they were like a stay-at-home mom or, a housewife or whatever the terminology is these days, and their whole being seemed to revolve around being that person, being that homemaker, that caretaker, and
Mhm.
then when that person is no longer there to care for, they no longer they
Mhm.
no longer need that energy and that time from you. They're left with trying to pick up the pieces or trying to figure out what is it that I do now? What's my purpose, I guess, for being here? And it's difficult, it's weird to say what's my purpose for being here because you had a purpose before, you took on that role,
That role, yeah.
which became your life. But now that that role no longer fits, I think sometimes people are left trying to figure out, well, what's next?
Mhm.
And what I find is that sometimes they are stuck in that place still,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
afraid to move on. They're afraid to do something different, to do something new. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be something different or something new, but just reclaim what they were, who they were before,
Before. Mhm.
before that particular season. So it's an interesting thing to observe and to think about.
But
Mhm.
that really is something different or something new, right? So our I think, I believe, our lives are only ever lived in relationship to everything else. Like, none of us is just ourselves outside of relationship, and so anytime there's a change in relationship, especially a new relationship or one ending by a death or something, who we are changes because, like, the field of relationships change, and it will have to be something new and different. Sometimes I wonder, it may not be that people are afraid, right? But that people don't know how to
Mhm,
reshape their lives around this absence or this new presence, right? We
Mhm.
don't really spend a lot of time talking about intentionally how to
Mhm.
reshape our lives around a change.
Mhm.
and I think that's an important conversation to have either with other people or even with yourself. Think about what it is that you want. Is there something from your past that you want to regain, reclaim, redo? Is there something that you wanted to try before and haven't had the opportunity for whatever reason to do it? And, what can your life look like from this point on? What do you want it to look like from this point on?
Mhm.
And some people, they jump into that wholeheartedly, like, yeah, my kid is off to school. I'm ready to go out and shake a leg
Take a
or
leg.
whatever, or whatever. And some
Yeah.
people are like, huh, I
And
like
we're
to do
talking
that, but
about
I would have to do it. It's difficult. It's hard to think about doing it on my own now. I don't know.
and we're talking about transitioning from people leaving the home, but just, there's a transition and an adjustment, not a transition, but an adjustment that takes place when people come into your home as well, whether it's a blended family
Mhm.
or you get a roommate even, a spouse. Those take adjusting as well,
Yeah.
especially if you're someone that's used to living alone and now you have a roommate or now you're married. You're used to doing things a certain way. Now you have this other person to consider or, you know, so it's
Mhm.
not just people leaving, it's people coming into your space as well.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I think that sometimes that kind of a change, the kind that you choose can be easier because you have a way to map things out with the other person. You probably consider what to do, how to adjust before that change actually, before
Mhm.
that transition actually happens. And so you had
Yeah.
time to prepare and plan for it.
Yeah, if you were smart
Ideally.
about it. If you were smart about it and you sat down and you gone over
Mhm,
the things that you need to go over before stepping in and making a commitment like that, yes.
mhm. And that goes back to think how Kim started it. How do you plan for it?
Yeah,
Or do you
yeah.
plan for it? Yeah.
Mhm.
So why do you think that sometimes these changes, ones that are positive in nature and sometimes the ones are negative, but sometimes I think even the positive ones, sometimes that change or that transition can feel like a bit of a loss. Do you know what I mean? And I'm trying to figure out like why. Why do you think that is?
Mhm.
Or do you not agree with that?
No, I think that's probably true, right? So, I think that we are always evolving and changing, right? The big truth of life is that life is change. And I think every time we change, every time we grow, we lose something, we leave something behind. And I also think I have a couple thoughts about this. One, people are terrible with change, right?
Mhm.
Our bodies
Absolutely.
themselves tend toward like homeostasis. But I also think when we are getting change that we've wanted, right? That we have looked for or worked for, we are eager and happy and focused on the positivity of that change. And we might actually fail to acknowledge what we are losing in that change. And I think even if we fail to acknowledge it, though, it's a little pea that's there, right? Like that story of the princess and the pea, and
Yeah.
it's like all the mattresses on top of the pea. I think even if we fail to acknowledge it, it's still there, and it's probably gonna rub us in ways that need attending to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense.
I think I understand what Kim is saying. I was thinking just I don't know if this even makes sense that definitely my first thought was people fear change, it's uncomfortable,
Mhm.
and you feel like you're giving up a part of yourself,
Mm,
is what I was thinking, especially when you're bringing, like I said, other people into your space and you have to make sacrifices and accommodations, and you feel like you're giving up a part of yourself.
yeah, that makes sense.
So even if I think about my big transition here, I was excited to become a minister. I was excited to be in a new place, but I also really liked where I lived. And I really liked the church that I was a part of, and I really liked the work that I did. And so in order to do this new thing that I'm really excited for and spent 3 years working towards, that still meant, like, a letting go of all these other things that were really important to me.
Yeah.
And if I don't actually spend time to acknowledge that, there's this little bit of grief that I'm taking along without paying attention to it.
Mhm. Yeah.
I like the part where you talked about acknowledging it, not just like sweeping under the rug, but acknowledging it and working through it or not.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But being able to identify what it is.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of those kinds of changes and also the kind of change that encompasses like a real loss, person, identity, place, whatever, how do you know or how do you move beyond that, right? How do you know when you're clinging to, I guess, the shadow of who you were? And is that a bad thing?
Mm.
I mean, I generally think clinging is a bad thing.
Well, you put substitute a different word in there then.
But no, I think that is the word, right? That's what you're talking about. It's like yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think clinging because I do think it's a bad thing. Probably that's why I chose that word. But it could be holding on to because sometimes for some people, it is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just holding on to something that was steady and stable. That gave you comfort and peace because it was well defined.
Mhm.
I
So,
guess when it keeps you from doing anything else,
Yeah.
when it keeps you from progressing and moving forward.
mhm.
when you're stifled, when you're stuck in that place and you can't, you know what I mean? You can't move on to whatever's next. When that thing is no longer serving you or you can no longer do anything beyond that,
Mhm.
especially when, like you said, when you use the example of a housewife, homemaker, or whatever term we're using these days, and you no longer have that person that you're serving or catering to or caring for, and now you're doing nothing at all, not even for yourself. You're not getting out, you're not finding something else to occupy your time and another way to give and care for or serve, then that's when you know.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I didn't even think about this, but as you were speaking, something came to my head, and we talked about, you mentioned catering, serving, whatever, but also the role that that person had in your life. They catered to you, they served you, they gave you something too, and now you no longer have that.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
Mhm.
Mm. And so what do you suggest? How would you deal with that? How do you deal with that?
A support system,
Mhm.
therapy, counseling, whatever it is that you need to seek out to have someone to pull you out of, for lack of a better term, that rut.
Mhm. I agree, and I also think it's important for me to acknowledge that I don't think it's necessary, and I think it'll do a disservice to the person you were and to the person that you're missing or, whose presence in your life you no longer have, to ignore that, to forget it, to not honor that. Because I think sometimes what happens is other people want you to move on and stop talking. Why you always still talk about this person, refer to this person? And they see when you're referring to that person as you being stuck in that place,
Mhm.
but you don't wanna forget. It's not
Right.
you don't want to leave that person. I don't wanna say you don't wanna leave them behind, but you don't have to leave that experience behind. You can carry it with you.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure I expressed what I actually meant, but close enough.
And when you lose someone, you have to find a support that understands where you are in your grief.
Mhm.
Like you guys know, I lost my best friend the day of our reunion, and his wife, I think she posts every day
Mhm.
something. That's where she is, and that's what she needs to do to get through
Mhm.
this. If she needs to post something every day, then she needs to post something every day.
Mhm.
This is how she's remembering him, and this is how she's grieving, and this is how she's processing everything.
Mhm.
So you have to have the right people in place that understands where you are.
Right.
Mhm.
That understands where you are and support that and not expect you to heal or to move on in the timetable they think that you should.
Right. Right.
So I have Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19, which says, Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it?
That's a great scripture. I have no scripture today.
I have a not a scripture, but a quote, and in checking it, I realized that I had actually been misquoting this for a couple of weeks. But this thing about transitions and figuring out sort of what you will do next or who you are next reminds me of this Howard Thurman quote. And what I remembered of the Howard Thurman was a African American Black theologian in the 20th century. But so what I was remembering was this idea of finding this intersection between what the world needs and what it is that you are called to do, right? And like finding
Mm,
what the world needs and what you are called to do. But Howard Thurman actually said something different. What he said is, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it because the world needs people who have come alive.
mm,
I like that. How are you misquoting?
I was saying that Howard Thurman says something about finding that space between what the world needs and what it is that makes you come alive and what you're called to do. But he doesn't actually say like to find out what the world needs and find out what you want to do. He says find out what you want to do and find out what makes you come alive because what the world needs are people who are alive. Don't worry about what you think the world needs. Does that make sense? I
mm.
mean, it's like a slight difference, but
Yeah, I got it.
meaning is still there, right? Find out what makes you come alive. Find out what it is that you are called to do and go do that because there's got to be a need for it.
Mhm.
Awesome stuff.
So, I guess what we're saying is that life transitions aren't necessarily easy, but they are proof that we are growing. And whereas the old season might not fit anymore and the new one might feel awkward. Trust that you'll find your footing. And if this episode gave you something to think about, share it with a friend who's in their own season of change.
Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky, and let us know what transitions you are experiencing right now.
Be sure to join us back here. Let us know what you want to discuss, what you want to talk about, what you want to hear about. And we'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Bye bye.